Hi, everyone. Welcome to our science talks, the first science talk of the year. And this year we'll have something really nice. We will start a conversation with our Deputy Director, Zita Sebesvari, who will let us know what you need to know about the latest IPCC report. I'm sure many of you have seen and read a lot about the latest IPCC report that was presented yesterday. And many of us are puzzled and have many questions. I have many doubts about what's happening and what shall we expect and what can we do to do something to make a more sustainable future for everyone. So welcome, Zita. We are very happy to have you here, and I think our audience will be very happy to learn.
Very much for having me.
Okay, so let's start with a quick context question. So tell us a little bit about the context. Like, why is this IPCC report so important now?
This is actually an important question because if you look into the report, it's like 5,600 pages long, the main report. So it's really easy to get lost in the report and in all the tremendous details which it provides. Why is it important now? So from my perspective, it speaks maybe to three different things. One is that the summary for policymakers closes with a very strong sense of urgency. So the report basically says that there's a very small and closing window of opportunity where we can still react and we can prevent the worst coming to the worst, so to say. So it conveys this urgency. At the same time, this is the report of the Working Group 2 of the IPCC, which is concerned with the impacts of climate change, adaptation, and vulnerability, which really has a policy importance right now. So the next COP, which will be in Egypt, will have one of the focus on adaptation. At the same time, also the conversations about the global goal and adaptations are ongoing. This is, so to say, focused into the so-called Glasgow Sharm-el-Sheikh program on the global goal of adaptation, which started in November in Glasgow and which we ran for 2 years, and where we basically have the conversation about how this global goal could look like. And of course, this report, which is on adaptation and vulnerability, will feed into that process. Zooming out, so this is the second report. You may be aware that there was the report of the Working Group 1 published in August last year, which was on the physical science. So what do we know about the changes in the physical part of the world? This second looks into the impacts, which impacts we actually already have seen, observed, documented, which are the projected impacts, and what are adaptation measures which are ongoing and needed, and what other solutions we might have to adapt. And there will be a third report published end of April, which is the report of the Working Group 3 of the IPCC, looking into solutions in terms of mitigation. So if you want to look into solutions for adaptation, then this is the report published yesterday, which you need to look into. You are muted, Ariana. Ariana, you are muted.
Sorry, sorry, I don't know what happened. Yeah, I think the urgency was stressed, and it couldn't have been stressed more throughout the UN agencies, NGOs, the people. Everyone was talking about the urgency. And the Secretary General of the United Nations gave a very concise message and said, adaptation saves lives. But the report also says, like, adaptation can cause unintended consequences, which we could also maybe call it maladaptation. So can you give us maybe some examples of these and talk about the importance of adapting in a way that is sustainable?
Okay, So maybe I would start with adaptation and then follow up with maladaptation. So first of all, this report is probably the first one which gives so much space to adaptation. So of course it was part of previous IPCC reports as well, but in this one it's really built in organically, so to say. So in every chapter of the report, you will find adaptation as mainstreamed part of the report. So that's really important because the report contains chapters on regions, it contains chapters on specific areas such as cities or cities at the coast. And you will find in each of these, so to say, the adaptation options as well. The report also sees that there's a lot of adaptation ongoing and that it's reported, but it's by far not enough. And one of the drivers behind this that finance for climate action is still mainly channeled to mitigation. So only around 5% of the climate finance is going into adaptation. So of course, mitigation is very important. We have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But due to the fact that climate change is already happening, mitigation is not enough. It needs to be paired with adaptation. For example, if you are looking at a low-lying coast where we committed to quite of a high level sea level rise already, this commitment means that sea level rise happening even if we stop emissions now. That means that adaptation needs to be designed in a way that it can anticipate future sea level rise and that the best solutions are found for now and for the future. So basically the report brings adaptation examples across the globe, but also comes to the conclusion that adaptation action is not yet enough. And yes, the report has also chapters on maladaptation, but it needs to be seen, so to say, in this perspective. So it's hugely important that we invest more into adaptation. And while we're doing so, we need to make sure that we do not maladapt. Just to give some examples, if we are at the low-lying coast, it could be that we lock in ourselves with very expensive and costly grey infrastructure, so built up seawalls and so on, which also takes from the coastline the resilience to adapt itself to climate change and its consequences. But these kind of maladaptive decisions may happen in different areas. For example, if you have climate risk insurance and if the climate risk insurance is not designed in a good way, it could also lead to less action from the insurance taker. And instead of increasing the adaptive capacity, it could also lead to just let the loss happen and I will receive insurance afterwards. It could happen also in the cities if you green your city and if you build a blue and green infrastructure, it could lead to gentrification, which could again lead to changes in social structure, social stratification, so that probably vulnerable populations, poor population cannot afford anymore staying in those nicely upgraded area and would need to move somewhere else. And so those examples exist, but on the large picture, so to say, it's important that we actually invest more into adaptation while we are making sure that that we know the trade-offs and we avoid those unintended consequences.
Thank you so much, Zita. It's super interesting. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about our institute and what our institute is doing. So the United Nations University Institute of Environment and Human Security, because everyone now will know the full name, has been echoing on how disasters are interconnected, but also the solutions. So can you give us maybe some examples of concrete solutions that we could have?
Thank you very much for that question. So, yes, we published in September 2021 the first edition of the report, Interconnected Disaster Risk. We tried to look at 10 different events happened in the year before and how they are actually interconnected on different levels, from the root causes, but also from the impacts and ripple effects, so to say, across the globe. And certainly greenhouse gas emissions have been one of the drivers for many of the events, but also insufficient disaster risk reduction and also not looking enough into unintended consequences for the environment when we are doing decisions. And very interesting examples for that are, for example, if you implement nature-based solutions in a way that you actually do not take care of biodiversity. For example, if you reforest an area which haven't been forested before, a peatland, for example, or a savanna. If you reforest that, then you might gain, so to say, for mitigation, so for greenhouse gas reduction, because the plants would build in carbon, but at the same time, you are causing really a threat to biodiversity. So the new IPCC report really warns for taking actions, for example, on savannas, on peatlands, and really raises the importance of biodiversity in the context of nature-based solutions. But in general, if these biodiversity safeguards are really taken into serious consideration, the nature-based solutions are one of those integrated solutions we advocated in the Interconnected Disaster Risk Report, and which feature also very strongly in the new IPCC report. We call them in a way win-win-win solutions because you can address with it climate mitigation, as well as adaptation, as well as disaster risk reduction. So they are good for biodiversity, they are good for the climate crisis, and at the same time they can also support livelihood, local livelihoods. But to be able to see them as such, they really need to be implemented in a way that there's high sensitivity for biodiversity issues. So the IPCC report brings some examples for unintended consequences of mitigation for biodiversity. For example, crops which are produced to produce bioenergy, or carbon capture using plants, which really can harm soil fertility, which can harm biodiversity. So all these trade-offs need to be considered and navigated.
Thank you, Zita. And well, let's remind our audience that they are welcome to send us any questions. However, well, it was such good examples of ecosystem-based adaptation. And what's interesting to see, one of the key messages of this report was that safeguarding and strengthening nature is key. So maybe you already gave us many examples, so maybe you can explain what does this mean, and if you have any other examples of things that the Institute is doing, for example, it would be great.
Yeah, thank you very much. So this IPCC report really raises the importance to see the biodiversity crisis together with the climate crisis, and brings some examples why it is so important. It documents in great detail how climate change is already impacting ecosystems, how it's changing the range of species, so the area where species actually occur, documents this shift. It documents also changes in phenology, so at the time of flowering, for example, changing, the impacts of all this. And with that, it also documents that nature's ability to actually facilitate our adaptation and our food security and survival is also changing. So the more climate change is happening, the more impact we will see and document on ecosystems, and with that also impact the so-called ecosystem services, which actually provide us food, water, clean air, but also cultural services, pollination, and so on. So it's in a way all interconnected. So it documents loss of species and projects a great number of species lost until mid-century if we continue to follow the same path. Some of the examples are, for example, coral reefs, which are already extremely threatened by 1.5-degree warming, and they will be virtually lost by 2-degree warming. But also mangroves and wetlands, coastal wetlands are threatened. The report provides an overview of all impacts on ecosystem, but also these projected impacts. And these projected impacts means that the nature-based solutions which are implemented today may not be able to provide those adaptation benefits in the future if greenhouse gas emissions continue. So again, we are coming back to this very strong mitigation adaptation message. We really have to do both, and we really have to do both now in order to do not close that really small window of opportunity we still have.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
You asked also about what we are doing. So it's important to say that here in the Institute at UNU-EHS that we try to look into solutions which combine different kind of adaptation measures. So one example is, for example, the flood adapt projects which we implement in central Vietnam, and we look there at ecosystem-based measures combined with measures related to insurance solutions, social protection, and early emergency warning solutions, and so on. So that, in fact, on the ground, you need to combine these different solutions together. So there's no one solution, there's no silver bullet. And one of our other projects is called Economics of Climate Adaptation, run in the Institute, which provide a modeling tool to actually look at, they call it smart mix of different measures, how to intelligently combine actually different adaptation solutions to have the best outcome. And this so-called ECA model also does it based on economic considerations. So it's a cost-benefit model which help decision makers to find the smart mix.
Yes, thank you, Zita. I think our audience can always take a look at our website and read more about many of the other projects we have. So I think maybe we can end this conversation with a bit of hope. So maybe you can give us one or two key takeaways from you that after reading the report, to give some hope to our audience and some inspiration to act more, act better, and at the end, we all want a sustainable and better future for everyone. So we would like to hear from you.
Yeah, so if you ask on this more personal note, so mitigation is key, and everyone can contribute its part by switching off the light, by consuming vegetarian food, and so on. So those measures are well known. What is probably less well known, what can we do to adapt? And the good thing about adaptation is that it's a very local process. It's similar to biodiversity protection. So while greenhouse gas emissions, so to say, you see the outcome on the global level. Adaptation is a very local process. So every community, every private person can do something to adapt himself, herself, or the community to the adverse impacts of climate change. So in a small scale, this can be a garden which provides shade, which provide pollination services. It can be small scale little ponds in the city context. You can remove surface sealing on your property. You can advocate in your city for removing surface sealing at many places in your city. You can advocate for removing cars, as much cars as possible from the city, and make your cities livable and adapted to future climate change. So adaptation is very local, and everyone can champion it, and everyone can lead on it, and this is very important, I think.
Thank you so much, Zita. Totally agree. I am sure our audience learned a lot from you today. I don't think we have any more questions. I have been looking, but please, if you have any questions, just send us a message through social media, and we will try to answer them later today. Thank you so much, Zita, for being with us today, and we're very happy to have you, and we'll have you soon in another science talk. You'll learn more about it on our website. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.